When people hear Overwatch today, the first thing that usually pops into their head isn't a hero or a map anymore. What comes up instead is the weird journey the game's name went through. A lot of games get sequels, sure, but this one managed to turn a simple number into a full-blown debate about what the game even is. Back in November 2019 at BlizzCon, Blizzard Entertainment announced Overwatch 2, and the idea behind it was actually pretty clear. The sequel was meant to be the story-focused version of the game. Proper co-op missions, hero progression, big cinematic storytelling. Player versus player, PvP modes were still going to be there and carry over, but the main reason the sequel existed was player versus environment, PvE, content. Even if you didn't watch every developer interview, it was simple to explain. The original game was the competitive hero shooter, and the sequel would explore the world and its characters in a bigger way. 2 years later, in May 2021, things shifted when the developers revealed the move to 5 versus 5. That single decision changed the multiplayer side straight away. Removing one tank sped the game up and made fights easier to follow, but it also put a lot more pressure on one player in a way the old 6 versus 6 system never did. A lot of long-time players still argue about that change because it altered the rhythm that had defined the original game for years. October 2022 is where things really started to go wrong. On October 2nd, the servers for the first Overwatch shut down. 2 days later, on October 4th, Overwatch 2 launched as a free-to-play game. Instead of sitting alongside the original, it replaced it completely. Anyone who wanted to keep playing had to switch over. That choice on its own made the sequel feel less like a fresh game and more like a forced upgrade. Launch week didn't exactly help. Players logging in during those first days ran into queues, connection errors, and reports of distributed denial of service (DDoS) attacks on the servers. Even if some of that chaos was outside Blizzard's control, what most people remember is simple. They installed the sequel and struggled to get into matches. Around the same time, another system caused problems. Blizzard asked many players to attach a phone number to their account through SMS Protect before they could play. The idea was to cut down on cheating and smurf accounts, but it blocked certain prepaid numbers and annoyed people almost straight away. Blizzard loosened the rules not long after, but by then the first impression had already taken a hit. Monetization quickly became the next big talking point. Free-to-play meant a seasonal structure, a cosmetic shop, and a battle pass replacing the original loot box system. None of that was surprising on its own, because plenty of modern multiplayer games use the same setup. The problem started when hero unlocks were pulled into that system. Early on in Overwatch 2, new heroes could sit partway along the free battle pass track unless you bought the premium version. For a game built around swapping characters mid-match, putting hero access behind progression or payment felt like the wrong move to a lot of players. May 16th, 2023 ended up being the turning point for that player versus environment, PvE, promise. Blizzard put out a developer update confirming that the big hero mission system they had shown years earlier would no longer arrive as first described. Instead of the huge progression mode players had been picturing since 2019, the plan shifted towards smaller story missions slotted into the live game. June 2023 followed with the Invasion story missions, sold together as a paid bundle. The missions looked good and had strong cutscenes, but the overall scale was much smaller than their early presentations made people think it would be. What once sounded like a huge co-op pillar for the sequel had turned into shorter story episodes built into the seasonal model. Another key moment came in August 2023 when Overwatch 2 released on Steam. The store page quickly picked up tens of thousands of user reviews and ended up with an overwhelmingly negative rating. Anyone scrolling through Steam could see that red bar straight away, which turned years of different complaints into one clear warning sign. Fast forward a few years and even the name changed again. On February 4th, 2026, Blizzard started presenting the live game simply as Overwatch again, framing it as the start of a new story-focused era instead of leaning on the sequel label. Seeing that whole timeline laid out makes it clear why the number 2 became such a loaded part of the discussion. A sequel title normally signals a clean break or a clear upgrade. In this case, it ended up carrying a mix of things at once. The shutdown of the original game, a new monetization setup, a major gameplay format change, and a PvE plan that shifted a lot over time. From a design point of view, the core gameplay is still impressive. Few shooters match how clear the abilities are or how different each hero feels in a fight. The characters, visual style, and match pacing are still some of the strongest parts of the whole genre. None of those fundamentals disappeared during the transition. At the same time, the way the game was branded shows how much expectations matter in long-running online games. Once players attach a big idea to a sequel, taking that idea away later becomes extremely difficult. The number on the title might seem like a small detail, but it shapes how people see every update that comes after it. Dropping the 2 doesn't rewrite the history of the last few years. Server launches, policy changes that had to be undone, design shifts, and community reactions are all part of the record now. Removing the sequel label mostly just resets the conversation, so future updates aren't immediately judged against that older promise. From a wider view, the whole situation is a strange example of modern game development. A multiplayer title built for long-term updates tried to reinvent itself with a sequel, then slowly slid back toward being an ongoing live game again. Whether this new era works will depend less on the name, and more on whether players feel confident about where the game is heading next. If you've got your own Overwatch story, or you think I've missed something, drop it in the comments. If you made it this far, I appreciate it. This has been Ghost Lobby. Thanks for watching.